The larynx is also known as your voice box. That is because the larynx is basically where your vocal cords will be housed. The larynx primarily consists of 9 pieces of cartilage, all kind of forming somewhat of a cartilaginous box that will surround and protect the vocal cords. You take a look at an image here that relates to the larynx. There are 3 single pieces of cartilage along with 6 cartilages that are divided up into 3 different pairs. I'm going to take a look at the single cartilages first here. You should keep in mind the description of those single cartilages as well as their functions. First up, you have the thyroid cartilage, also known as the Adam's apple. It's a large shield-like piece of cartilage that basically is going to protect those vocal cords from both the anterior and lateral surfaces. So you see the thyroid cartilage here from the anterior surface, and it will also extend around to the sides, but notice there is no posterior aspect to the thyroid cartilage. The reason that we describe it as being a shield-like piece of cartilage is that there's nothing at the back, but it protects the front and the side, somewhat akin to a shield. Also known as the Adam's apple because that thyroid cartilage contains a prominence or a pointed component that in males is a little bit larger due to the effects of testosterone. The next single piece of cartilage that we'll make mention of is the cricoid cartilage. The cricoid cartilage is the only cartilage that goes completely around the larynx. So you see it kind of shaded to the back here and then also posteriorly here. Its main job is to provide structural support, since it is the only one cartilage that goes completely around the larynx. Next, we have the epiglottis. The epiglottis is a leaf-like piece of cartilage whose function is very important. That epiglottis is designed to protect your airway when you swallow. We go back to the image we had up here previously, and we'll magnify the area here. This is the epiglottis. Here's the larynx. When you swallow, whatever is moving posteriorly has the option of moving into the esophagus or into the larynx. Well, to ensure that it moves into the esophagus, the epiglottis should fold backward, covering up the opening to the larynx, directing whatever you swallow posteriorly into the esophagus so that it can continue through the digestive system. Now, if that epiglottis fails to do its job, this is what would happen when someone would begin to choke, or if you swallowed liquid, you would say it went down the quote-unquote wrong pipe. If that item is solid food and you get it lodged here in the larynx, that's what the Heimlich maneuver is designed to get around. The Heimlich generates a very quick increase in the pressure within the lungs. A very quick gust or rush of air should move upward through the larynx, and hopefully it will move through with enough force to dislodge whatever is stuck and ultimately allow it to be expelled. Should that material be liquid and move into the larynx inappropriately, usually it triggers or initiates a very strong cough reflex due to the irritation of the airways. So, you've got the epiglottis, once again important because it protects the airways during swallowing. The paired pieces of cartilage, once again, 6 remaining pieces of cartilage in total, but divided up into 3 different pairs. We have the arytenoid cartilages, small triangular shaped pieces of cartilage that sit directly on top of the cricoid. We also have the corniculate cartilages. They're even smaller triangular shaped pieces that sit directly on top of the arytenoid cartilages. And finally, we have the cuneiform cartilages that are seen essentially at the base of the epiglottis here. So you see the epiglottis, there's the base, there's your cuneiform cartilage. These other pairs of cartilage are essentially used to aid, in the case of the cuneiform, with covering up the glottis or the opening to the larynx. In the case of the arytenoid and also corniculate, you would see them used for typically muscle attachment. I want to say a very quick word here about the vocal cords themselves. You have 2 different vocal cord sets. You have the true vocal cords and also the false vocal cords. The true vocal cords are connective tissue that basically function to yield sound. So that's why they're termed true vocal cords, because as they resonate and vibrate, they produce sound. In other words, they produce your voice. The false vocal cords do not produce sound. Instead, their importance is in breath holding. When you consider the fact that in order to hold your breath, you have to completely cover up this opening the true vocal cords alone would not be wide enough to do that. Enter now the false vocal cords seen here in the pink lateral areas. These false vocal cords would cover up the remaining area and therefore allow for the complete closing off of the opening, and therefore allow you to hold your breath as no air can move in or move out of the respiratory system. So that'll conclude the discussion here about the larynx. Please make sure you know those descriptions of those cartilages and also understand the importance of each set of vocal cords.